So Lumberyard Productions. Whose idea was that?
Lumberyard Productions, that's the executive producers. That was their idea. I had
Why
nothing
Lumberyard?
They like wood. I don't know.
Like most of us, most dudes,
Really?
way into wood. Well,
Really?
sure. I mean,
Kevin Smith is into wood.
you heard it here first. That wife of mine's a beard. So I'm Kevin Smith, and you are,
Jeff Anderson.
and we're here to talk about your first flick, your directorial debut. as
Now
they say.
you know.
Now you know.
Or as I've often seen it written, now you know.
They write that.
All the time.
I always see it like on News Askew or something abbreviated as Nick. NYK.
I like it.
It's short, right?
Nick.
So this opening sequence that you guys did,
Yeah.
where now you got some stock footage of the Vegas Strip, or did you go out and shoot it?
No, we got stock footage of Vegas. The scene that we're in here is actually on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood. It's
At the Riot House,
The Riot House,
Yeah.
yes.
the Hyatt, right on Sunset.
Hyatt.
It was up at the top. I remember that. I remember
was-
because I'm in this scene, so I remember shooting it this
The
day.
penthouse in the Hyatt, you stick some neon lights there behind the curtains, bam, you got Vegas.
Suddenly it was Vegas.
That's-
Now who was that? This wasn't that one of the producers?
That was Alec. He's one of the producers, yeah. Everybody eventually will turn up in this movie.
Which is like what every great independent, the hallmark of every great independent film is whoever was behind the camera also winds up in front of the camera.
Actually, we got the DP in this movie. It's the first time the DP's ever been in the movie.
Really?
Yes.
And had he shot a bunch before that?
He shot a bunch before that, but this scene, he's actually in this scene. This scene we're Steadicam, so he wasn't operating the camera that day, and I was like, what are you doing sitting there? Get in there. This is a party.
Where'd you find the DP?
The DP, I interviewed a bunch of people, and like when we were talking about it, it was like an 18-day shoot or something, and right then and there, you know if the DP is for you. If you say 18 days and their eyebrows move up in the air, they're not for you. Marco Capetta was the DP who actually wound up shooting this, and he was the only guy that I said, can you do this in 18 days? And he was like, fuck, I could do it in 5. I said, that's my guy.
So based on a dude going, yeah, I can pull it off. You're the man.
I'm really easy like that.
You made a bold choice of showing some breastises right here in the opening scene.
We did. Well, you write a script and you have enough fucks in there that you're going to get an R.
Right.
So
Might as
my
well learn
idea,
it.
I'm like, dude, show me some boobs. I just didn't know the boobs were going to be these boobs. It was, when we wound up shooting, it was one of the girls that was working for us said, my dad owns a strip joint. She said, well, she came to me, she said, have you hired the boobs yet? Because that's what we called them. And I said, no, I hadn't hired the boobs yet. And she said, my dad owns a strip club. I've got 2 sisters that are strippers that want to do it. I'm a guy. I hear sisters, strippers want to do it. They're not going to charge us for free. I'm still
Free
thinking
boobs,
along.
always great.
I'm thinking along the independent line, small budget, free boobs, sisters. I'm conjuring up the Barbie twins. I'm like, bring them on. Of course, they came down and you see our boobs.
So wait, those 2 chicks with the boobs were related?
They were sisters, yeah.
Don't you think it's weird when related chicks are actually doing the
strippers and-
dance together?
Yeah,
It's kind of weird.
It's oddly titillating.
Was it? I don't know if that...
Before. It was at one point.
The idea of it.
The idea. Actually, what's pretty funny is like, we're not really paying much attention to the film, but there's a scene here where there's a party. Like the girls had never been in a movie before, and they
Right.
came down, and you were in this scene, and we shot this at night, and we were kind of working with the Steadicam, and it took us a long time to sort of figure out the moves and to, plan the scene, walk in the camera through it, and have all the action go on. And the girls, I guess they drove down from like somewhere up like in Oregon or something. So it was like a 12-hour car ride, and they got down there, and they had never been in a movie, so they thought we show up, we whip off our tops, movie's over, we go home, and we get to say we're in a movie. Well, 3 or 4 hours into shooting, the chicks are getting cranky and cantankerous, and at one point we're shooting this scene. And I'm in another room looking at the monitor, just kind of watching. And as we got the camera worked out, I finally would walk to the room and sort of just watch you guys as you're doing it. And there's one point I look over, and one of the strippers is crying. Like she's just bawling in the middle of the scene. It's like right here. Like in the background, you can't see her crying, but like that's how the scene was. And she's just standing there bawling. And I'm just like, oh, fuck. So I don't stop the scene. I go booking in the room, and I look at the monitor to see if she's on monitor, and she wasn't. So I was just like, yes! The stripper's in the middle of the scene crying, and I don't care because she's not on camera.
People nearby are like, he is one hard, cold son of a bitch. So basically, she just got real tired,
She
probably.
just got irritable, tired, didn't really know what was involved with it. And then when she came there, she says, well, I can't take my top off. I promised my boyfriend I wouldn't take my top off. So it was literally like, I don't think I've ever felt dirtier in my life sitting in a hotel room with this chick going, listen, it was like the scene from Fame. I'm like, Coco, take off your shirt, It was kind of ugly.
She has decidedly more glands there than Coco, though. Coco, I remember, was 2 fried eggs. This chick was a buffet.
Yeah, she's got a...
I remember they were none too happy about hanging out as long as they were.
Yeah,
Like they had this real look about them, like, I can't believe we're doing it again. That's what you get from people who, are never in movies before. They're like, why do we have to do it again? It's like you got to cover it from 19 different angles.
And the kicker was they didn't even have a lot to do in it. It was like basically, take your top off, stand there, and kind of dance around. I mean, if I was a chick, I'd be happy about that. I'd be doing it every minute, top down, dancing.
You could ask me, sir, and I would have given you boobs. I got boobs.
It almost came to that. I mean, it was like...
Kept,
look,
take your blouse off. I'm like, first off, I'm not wearing a blouse. I'm wearing a hoodie. Speaking of which, there I am.
There he is.
Rocking a hoodie and a gut.
There he is.
What was it? Do you remember that night? Do you remember directing? I remember you directing me, and I remember you coming in and actually giving me notes and stuff, which I was like, what an interesting flip.
I had to. What do you think? You were just going to march in and just do your little thing and go? I actually remember you coming. You were nervous.
I was totally nervous.
You were a little nervous. I was like, look at that. Kevin Smith is nervous.
Oh, very much so, because you don't want to be the dude that blows the take, and I do stumble, like, once or twice, and I remember it was so weird because it's such an odd turnaround when I'm sitting there going like, God, I hope he covers me. I hope we do coverage because I blew that 3-shot and you didn't. I was like, really? We're moving on?
We didn't have enough film to cover. The cover wasn't even a word that we had. But it's funny when I finally figured out that you were going to do this part, I wanted to go back and rewrite it and put in some big fucking words like you do to Randall. You
some
bastard.
monologues too.
I was like, you know what? I'm going to put in these fucking mouthy paybacks.
The difference is you could pull that shit off. Me, I cannot. I've learned recently that I'm not a very good actor. That's my old lady too.
There she is.
She got to play the hooker.
Jennifer, who incidentally was cast before you were cast.
Yeah, right.
So
Long before me. There's me. I can't even. My broad's in negligee, and all I could see is that bald spot of mine. And look at me wearing socks with shorts. What an idiot.
That's actually a pretty funny scene, though. I always enjoyed that scene where, like, you do this whole speech and that turn around to, like, well, gentlemen.
Right. I'm pro-marriage, and then I'm like, I'm going to go put into this. I'm going to get at it what I put into it. And I remember Muse was supposed to play the dude who was the black dude who, talks about the rabbit, the bunny in the hole and stuff like that. That comes over and then almost pukes on his shoes or whatever.
Right. Jason was originally cast as that part, and I think he was in New Jersey at the time, right? And I think you bought him a plane ticket to come out and do it, and he never showed up for the plane.
That was when he lapsed back into drugs in one of those periods, and we just wrapped Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and all he wanted to do was hang out in Jersey and get high and stuff.
Well, even if he wasn't into drugs and he came into this party scene, it was so lively with the boobs and all, he would have launched right back into it.
Totally.
So,
he would have relapsed like a son of a bitch. He
would
have actually enjoyed that, because there was booze and there was boobs, and that's kind of like he probably wouldn't have, even if he was there for the scene, wouldn't have been able to do the scene because he would have been like, "What's up? How you doing?" Like macking on the stripper sisters.
And then they really would have been crying. I will say, getting back to that for 1 second, Anthony Fuller, who is the guy who wound up playing the drunk guy, was a friend of mine whom I gave that part to, like, literally the day before. And I thought he just nailed it. I mean, he killed me on that. Like, every time I watch it, his is one of the scenes that I always laugh. He's got this great sort of, like, he's falling over and grabs Sisto on the shoulder, and it always gives me a little chuckle. So Anthony Fuller, kudos to him for coming in the day before and really doing a good job
knocking it out of the park for you. While we're talking about I always thought this was an interesting shot right here. I was like, wow, he actually did something where he did something visually interesting.
Creative,
something that I never in a million years would have thought to do.
I like it. It's actually the DP, Marco Capetta. It was his idea, and when I was looking at DP reels, Marco had the short on his reel where he did a similar shot through a mirror. Actually, it wasn't like this where you can see action behind it, but it was somebody shot through a mirror. And I always thought in his reel it was a really neat looking take. And this when he kind of proposed, I think he proposed the idea to me, and just looking at it, I was like, this is beautiful. It shows the background action. I like that Todd is speaking, but we're seeing him speak through the mirror and looking at the
It's
back
a way
of
to
him.
kill two pieces of coverage at once.
Exactly.
For the price of one.
It's all about saving film.
Did you have to? Who made the license plate? The boss. These are little things that like people who watch movies don't even know how difficult stuff like this is.
Yeah, that was it was written into the script, and our Tondi, who was our set designer, went and got the thing made. It was just a little plastic license plate that we just slapped over it, but I always got a little chuckle out of this car that I'm driving in this movie, and I'll point out this thing. This was a great thing at independent films. It's like we had a guy who wanted to be in the movie, and it was like, dude, can you give him a line in the movie? And 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 somebody said to me, he's got this really cool car that he'll give you if you give him a line in the movie. And I was like, well, what's the car? And they said, it's a brand new restored 70 Barracuda. I'm like, oh, give it to me.
Did he literally give
The
you
guy
the car?
literally gave us the car for the whole shoot. He gets one line later, and I'll point him out to you if we're watching it later, but he's actually awesome in his line. He was perfect. He just plays a customer on the airplane who's so New Jersey and gives this line because the plane is headed to New Jersey, and then gave us the car. So it's like, when you're shooting you have a $380,000 budget, stuff like this that dresses up a scene, like these guys are driving a 70 Barracuda, like, it's just nice. It's on the
Credibility, and you
screen.
didn't have to pay for that credibility.
Didn't have to pay for it. We gave the guy a line who I thought he did a great job. It was nice.
Speaking of dudes who did a great job, there's two of you right now.
Well, there he is. I won't even talk about me. I'll talk about my sidekick there, Trevor Furman, who, when we were casting for this, you do this thing here called breakdown service where you put out a character description to all the actors in town, and it's basically what you're looking for. And the character description for Biscuit was like unkept, goofy, scraggly-looking mug. So you could imagine the people that we're seeing out here in Hollywood, all the character actors. I mean, you go out to the waiting room and it looked like the bar scene in Star Wars of these characters and these people. It was just nutty. But when Trevor came in, he's a good-looking guy. He was like an 18-year-old kid, good-looking guy. I was like, wow, this is not what I envisioned for Biscuit. But he had like kind of a unique delivery the first time he came in and read. And when he left the room, I had a few people in the casting room with me who were like, no, he's just not right for it. Look at those goofy people out there. That's a Biscuit. And there was just something about his delivery. I was like, no, we bring that guy back for a callback. And the next time he came back, they were still sort of fighting me on it. Like, I don't think Trevor's right for it. He's not the right guy. But the next time he came back, I just sat down and read with him. And it's the first time I read with anybody. And it was like, that's the guy.
The name Biscuit.
Yeah.
Comes from a dude that we went to high school with, who you were kind of chummy with, more so than I. I mean, I knew him in high school. I'm not saying anything. Like I said before, guys love wood, is all I'm getting at. But
like you said before, guys love wood.
I believe you quietly seconded it off mic. So there was a dude named Andrew Michelizzi who we all called Biscuit. Why did he have the name Biscuit? Do you remember?
I'm not sure how it came about, but it somehow fit. Like
Yeah.
if you know Andrew and you know Biscuit, and incidentally enough, Andrew is now a cop. He's a Middletown cop
Is
in
he
New
really?
Jersey. Yeah.
So is he on the force with Roth?
He's on the force with Roth. They both went to the academy together and
Did they
came
really?
onto it. Yeah, but you can no longer call him Biscuit. You call him Biscuit, you'll find yourself in the big house.
Really? He
Does
doesn't-
not like Biscuit.
You don't rock Biscuit anymore.
Exactly. If you kind of see him and hey, Biscuit, he's got a gun.
I
And
rem-
he's like, no, not
I believe
Biscuit.
he had guns back then. Didn't his dad own a fishing boat or a fishing? His family was involved in the fishing industry.
Yeah, it was Frank's Boats,
Frank's
which was
Boats,
in
that's
Atlantic
it.
Islands. Yeah.
I remember when I read the script and I read Biscuit, I was like, that's who all I ever saw was Andrew Michelizzi. And then when I saw the movie and saw who you cast, initially I was like, that ain't a Biscuit. That dude's barely a Triscuit because it's this tiny slip of a thing. And then, like you said, Trevor really has this interesting delivery as the character where, within 3 or 4 lines, I was like, oh, right on. Like, I could totally see why he cast him.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm writing down, that ain't a Biscuit, he's barely a Triscuit. I'm going to get shirts made.
That's a T-shirt in the making.
Nice
He's
shot right there, by the way. I love that
down
shot.
the hallway
I
shot.
love that
It's a
shot.
real. It reminds me of an Adrian Lyne shot in in that movie Fatal Attraction.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a long hallway shot.
Exactly, with the hardwood floors.
Nicely
and
lit too. Once again, I mean, I said it
Marco,
before.
awesome.
Yeah, you guys really, in terms of a first film, it's far more visually accomplished than my first film. I mean, you clearly had an idea going in, whereas I didn't. All I ever thought about was like, you know, the performance and the jokes and whatnot. And you actually put some fucking thought into making it look like a movie.
Well, you know. Actually, yeah, that was like when I met Marco. Marco's Italian.
Right.
And he's a photographer also, so he's really visual and had this really great thing. And not only did he say he can do it in X amount of days, but like looking at his reel looked really nice. And I almost thought his reel looked too nice for us. So it was like, when we were talking about the movie, I knew we were going to shoot out here, and the movie was supposed to take place in New Jersey, and I was a little concerned about that. My only note to Marco was really, we need sort of earth colors. And like I gave him a couple movies to watch. One was Beautiful Girls, and the other was the Ed Burns movie, just to look at and to get a reference, because those are set in the East Coast, and for some reason, if you have the dark colors and the earth tones, it just lends itself to New Jersey a little better. Like out here seems to be very bright and stuff, and I'll tell you, that's something like, I was even shocked the first time I saw the dailies. He lit it in such a way that it just, and like people who've seen it think that we actually shot in New Jersey, which is a huge compliment.
Did you ever go in and rearrange people's houses? That would, I mean, how much of any of the movie did you pull from real life?
You're not going to trick me with this one. I'm not going to talk about the relationship stuff. No, that stuff was just something I kind of came up with. I don't even know where it came up with. Like when I first started writing a script, it was called Fun-Loving Criminals, and it was about these guys that just kind of screw around with the neighborhood and do all these sort of wacky things. But I had no plot, so I inserted that romantic comedy stuff in there. But no, I never did that. And incidentally enough, after we shot, there was a thing on the news about an interior decorator who was going into people's houses and rearranging, and they were happy with the rearranged job he did. I'm like, this is a guy with a burning passion.
Put aside the terror of somebody who's actually, home invaded their dwelling, and then they're like, well, it's not bad.
He did a good job, though. I like what he did with the curtains. Well, I always thought, too, like, I never did break into houses, but I always thought it would be pretty like neat to be in there and to like think
thrill.
about getting busted. Yeah, the thrill of it,
danger.
and kind of, they truly don't do anything harmful. They just kind of fuck around with them. It wasn't like they were stealing, which is why I thought it was funny that you show the shot of the wallet and the keys, and they're not even interested in that. They just want to fuck around with them. It's the thrill of sort of being in the house.
Were you ever an outdoor fucker? That's the hallmark of an outdoor fucker, is somebody who liked the thrill of possibly being caught. Me and Mosier just had this conversation recently because he likes to go hiking with Alex. I'm like, you fuck when you're out there? He's like, no, I'm not really into outdoor fucking. And I was like, really? Neither am I. Why aren't you into it? And he was like, I just don't like the idea of maybe somebody catching us. But that's kind of the thrill of the outdoor fuckers. They kind of want to always be on the edge and be caught.
I could be an outdoor fucker. I'm all for it.
You dig that? That could be something that you get down with.
I can be down with it, Fucking in general.
This dude fucking in general in any way, shape, or form?
Inside.
Who's the dude with the ball and chain, that actor? We'll
Who's
get
the
to
dude?
Jeremy, but the dude with the actor with the
Todd
ball and chain.
Babcock. Yeah, that's Todd. He was. I saw a lot of people. Like, it's kind of funny when I put the script out there. I didn't see many actors for the lead roles. I saw a lot of actors came in and read other characters. For instance, Rashida didn't read for this part. She actually came in and read for Marty, and I just saw her more in this part, for the Carrie part. But Todd came in and read for Jeremy, the lead, and I was just like, he's a pretty boy, he's a good-looking guy, and I think he's probably better suited to play the Shane character. He was like, it was weird. You saw a lot of different takes of that Shane character, but he's the only guy who really got it, that had that sort of cockiness, just like, he just came in and nailed it.
What a lot of people who watch movies, particularly low-budget movies, don't realize is pulling off a shot inside an airplane is next to impossible.
Yeah.
It's really tough to get your hands on an airplane. You do a big-budget show,
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to build an airplane. But when
Yeah.
you don't got a lot of money, it's tough
Yeah.
to score. How did you score the interior of an airplane?
We shot this place. There was a place out in the valley that was... it was just coming about, and they were just starting it. That was a location that was an airport and had a fuselage in it. There was one other place, I guess. a lot of the stuff before that was shot in another place in the valley. It was an airport set that when you went and looked at it, it was really just dated and dilapidated. And you saw that set in a million different movies because it was the only set you had. So, like, unless you could afford to go onto the Universal lot or something, you inevitably used this one. There's the guy. That's the guy with the car.
Guy right there.
Perfect in that role and gave us the car.
Look at that stash. Perfect stash, dude.
I've never seen him drive the car. I'd actually like to see him tooling around in the car just to get a look at that. I don't know. I'd get a little kick out of that.
So
But anyway, so the airport scene, we heard about this new place that was building an airport set, and we went out to take a look at it, and they were about a month away from actually finishing, so they weren't quite done, and we just kind of said, well, you know, we'll give you X amount of dollars if we can come in and do this, and they let us use it. So we were actually the first people to go in and shoot this set. But that airplane was great because you could actually take it apart. You could take the seats out, you could remove a wall to put the camera in, so it was like a really film-friendly fuselage.
Was it pricey, or did they give it to you at a rate of some sort?
They gave it to us at a rate, but it was still pricey for our means. And
right.
Incidentally enough, that was the first day of shooting because
interior airplane.
Yeah, exactly, because it was like the whole thing, the airport, the interior of the plane. Because they were still building it out, we had to be there when the construction people weren't, and it was only those first 2 days of our shooting that we can get in there and actually shoot. So, like, you know, coming into it a first-time director, my first scene to shoot was 200 extras in this airport setting, and it was just a huge day.
That's where you find out how useful an AD is. Do you remember who your AD was?
I do remember who my AD was.
You like him or didn't like him?
Well, we fired him a week into it. So
yeah, well, apparently wasn't that useful.
I'm not going to say whether we liked him or didn't.
The AD, but the AD, what I guess people watching movies, unless you're involved in movies, don't really know is, like, as a director, you're really responsible for the primary actors.
Right.
And when it comes to something like 200 extras, thank God for the AD and the second and the third, because that's what they do. Like, I've discovered that probably on Mallrats, but more so on Chasing Amy and then Forward, is the AD is responsible for all that background action.
Right.
So, like, when you watch a movie and there's interesting shit going on with the extras, it's not like the director running to 20 different people going, now you're going to do this and you're going to do this.
No, I did that.
Did you run around?
Yeah, I did that. No, it's really amazing. Like, it's something you never think about. Like, I certainly didn't think about it as a director. Think about your extras.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable to watch them because, you know, especially when you're shooting independent and you're not paying extras. It's great when you got a budget and you're using working extras because there are people that make a living doing that. But, like, we're using friends and family, for the most part, people that have never been in film. Like, you'd watch a scene and it's like Night of the Living Dead in the background. Like, all of a sudden people forget how to walk. Their arms are like glued to their sides. They don't even bend at the knees and they just kind of come through the scene. And I'm like, dude, walk. Will you walk?
It's a bunch of Cindy Brady's. The moment that camera goes on, they all freeze up and whatnot.
It's unbelievable. And you know, the only really piece of advice you give them is, like, don't look at the camera.
All right.
So now they're like whistling, like looking up at the ceiling, like trying so hard not to look at the camera. And you're better off not even saying that to them. Just like, do what you do.
This is Stuart Pankin. Is that
Stuart
his name? From
Pankin,
Not
yeah.
Necessarily the News, amongst other things.
He's
He
awesome.
was in Fatal Attraction.
He was, yeah.
But so he was one of the dudes who just kind of read the script and was like, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, he was kind of one of these dudes that read, and you know, the name probably didn't jump out at me when I was first reading him, but the minute he walks in the door,
like, I
I'm
know
like,
this
oh
guy.
my God. And that's how it was for everybody, like Edie and all these people that came in, Edie McClurg and, you know, Liz Sheridan are people that, like, you see and you're like, wow. It was like, you know, I guess, you know, people ask me, like, when you were casting this, did you just kind of give them these parts because they were who they were? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of fun. I think it's kind of fun. Like, the few times I've seen it screened to film festivals and in front of audiences, I think it's neat when you come into the scene and, you know, everybody has that recognition, like, oh, hey, there's, you know, Seinfeld's mom, and, you know, I just thought it was fun.
So we didn't really talk about Jeremy yet because we put him off for the moment. So Jeremy, how did you arrive at Jeremy as the lead?
Jeremy Sisto as the lead. Like I said, I didn't read too many people for the lead roles.
This is a dude who went on to play Jesus at one point.
He played Jesus before this.
Was it before the flick?
Yes, that's what it was. I'm like, how can I go wrong casting Jesus? I mean, if you're going to have a leading man, that's the guy, JC. But no, I didn't read a lot of people for it. And Jeremy did come in and read, and when he came in and read, his hair was really long, and he had a beard. Mm-hmm. And I just remember, we should probably just be quiet for this scene.
You like that shot?
Let's see if you like my wood now, Smith. Yeah, no, Jeremy came in and he read and he had I can't look at the screen.
Who
I'm
is
having
that
a hard
lady?
time. That's Debbie Dunning, the Tool Time girl.
Really?
That was the best money we spent. We'll get back to you, Jeremy. I swear I'm not going to lose you, but I feel compelled to talk about this scene. You talk about independent films. Let's talk about independent films. I have this role in it, and my manager comes to me at the time and he goes, "Did you hire any girl for this scene?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And he's like, "What would you think about using Debbie Dunning for it?" I'm like, "Debbie Dunning, the Tool Time girl?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Well, I'd love it, but what would that cost me?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know. Let me call her and see if she's into doing it." That scene, too, I have a comment for that. But anyway, let's get back to Debbie Dunning, far more interesting. But anyway, he says, "Yeah, no, she'd probably be into doing it." And he makes a phone call and she'll do it. So she comes out and she drives all the way from San Diego. She lives like down by San Diego and comes up. We paid her SAG, like low budget scale for the day, which is like $230.
Right.
And it was like for $230, I get the call on the set one day, like, "Debbie's here. She wants you to come to the trailer and check out her bathing suits." But that is the best $230 you've ever spent.
I
It's
like directing.
Exactly. Like I originally asked for her to be in a thong, and I guess she brought thong. She just had a baby 4 weeks
Really?
or 4 months before we started shooting this, which is just mind-boggling to me. I'm sorry, but
Get lost in those.
yeah, but it was the point of my story. Best $200 I've ever spent is sitting there with Debbie Dunning. And by the way, it was the most crowded day on the set that we ever had.
'Cause
All of a
everybody
sudden,
shows up.
yeah, all these guys are on the set just sort of standing around.
Did you? I remember you getting crap for this scene somewhere. I remember you were telling me like people
Yeah.
don't like when animals get fucking.
Exactly.
Mowed down.
It's always kind of funny, like when you watch it with an audience, the audience almost divides right there. Like literally, the room divides. It's people who think it's funny and people who are like, "Oh, just not necessary." I admit it was a cheap way to sort of set these guys up as, kind of screwballs, and it was a cheap joke, and it was,
I think it's a funny joke.
I kind of liked it, but it's such a forced scene though. Like this chick comes out with this dog for no reason. She just leaves it in the yard, tied to this run. It's a Chihuahua. It's not going anywhere.
Happens all the time.
Yeah,
sir.
the
Ripped
lawnmower
from
guy's
headlines.
there. She's
Law and
just
Order
hanging
style.
out. She's into biscuit. It's such a forced scene, but.
So Jeremy, back to Jeremy now that the
Jeremy.
boobs are out of the way. Jeremy was one of the very few people you saw for the role, and he just kind of rose to the top.
Yeah, I like the way he read. But when he first came in, like you said, he had kind of the long hair and a beard, and for some reason he just looked a little older to me. And I was just like, yeah, I like the way he read, and I like what he did with it. But I don't know, I think he's too old to play it. He just kind of looks too old to me. And to his credit, when he came back for the callbacks, I guess, the casting people gave his agent that note that, Jeff thought he might have been a little old or whatever. The next time he came in, he had shaved, which I thought spoke volumes about him. It showed that he was into the role. You know,
Right. He was
that's a
willing to
personal
take his-
appearance thing,
totally.
to change your personal appearance just to get a role. I thought that was pretty cool, and it showed that he really wanted to do it. And I did like him. And once he was shaved, and he just kind of looked a little younger to me, and I thought he was perfect for the role.
Now we were talking about the other day the little neighborhood, the shooting neighborhood that you guys shot in, like this bizarre street out here in Los Angeles. Tell people about that.
Yeah, basically what you see here, most of the houses, all the different houses, are located on one street. Because we're obviously trying to set it in New Jersey, it was hard in California to find houses that look like New Jersey. Everything out here is stucco and Spanish roofs and stuff, and you don't have too many of that in New
And
Jersey.
flanked by palm trees and shit
Palm
like
trees and this and that. This road here is out in Van Nuys, and it's a street made for filming. There are no telephone lines. There's no telephone wires. There's very little palm trees, if any. Like even in the back, you don't see palm trees anywhere
Right.
on here. But like the location guy kept trying to find me New Jersey houses, and it would just never work. You had palm trees, you had all kinds of stuff, and this neighborhood wasn't bad. The downside to it was this neighborhood is located about 3 miles from the Van Nuys Airport, so sound really became an issue. And the street had sort of very strict rules about filming. Like it was so regulated by the film commission that it almost became very difficult to do here. While the houses are great and they lend themselves to film, it just became a big pain in the ass. You had to pay all kinds of extra money to park cars on the street, and it just really became something. And one of the biggest things was you couldn't film at night. And in the script, it took place at night. Like Jeremy, there's a scene later where Jeremy gets shot at. He's supposed to drive from there right to Rashida's house, but since we couldn't film at night, I had to sort of come up with that scene where Gil loses the car keys so that they spend the night and it becomes morning. Like you know, independent film, you have to do these things. But so the
That's your gum in the locks, sir. That's your little gum in the locks moment. So the street, they came and tried to shut you down, didn't they?
They did try and shut us down. We made all our days as far as schedule-wise when we were out there shooting. That, you know, obviously that's a concern to what you have to shoot that day you want to make. We were kind of ahead of ourselves one day, and we had all these scenes that take place at night. So I said, you know, we got a little extra time. Let's set up one of these car scenes and try and get this done just because we have extra time. So we took the time and set up this car scene, and it was kind of getting to like the magic hour. I don't know what it was. I think it was like 10 o'clock you had to be off the street, and it was summertime, so it didn't get dark till like 8:30, 9, somewhere in there. We had set this scene up, and literally as we're setting up the scene, these cars are pulling up to the street. And I'm like looking out, I'm like, who are these people? And they're like, well, they're with the, that's one of, everybody thinks that we just photoshopped that picture.
Right.
Everybody thinks we drew that hair on them, but that's Jeremy's real hair from high school. Sorry, Jer. But everybody, you know, this guy pulls up here, and as we're going, another car pulls up here, and I'm like, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, these people are here to make sure that we're down at 10 o'clock. I'm like, what is this? They're bringing in the heavies? Like, I don't get it. And literally at 10 o'clock, we were still in the middle of shooting the scene. This guy just walks up and goes, you guys are done. And, you know, of course, me as the director, I see these cars pulling up, and I'm like, they're literally going to have to shut me down. I'm filming, I'm getting this scene. And as more people show up, it became like a mob scene. They're like, no, you're done. And I was like, okay, we're done. Wrap it up.
So I remember you said something about the house. Like, did you wind up using one house for interiors and exteriors and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, you know, we didn't have a lot of money. Obviously, that's the big theme here. Are you getting that we didn't have a lot of money?
I think it's ringing through pretty clear.
Okay, good. We didn't have a lot of money, and so you want to get as much out of these locations as you can. So it's like you don't want to do company moves. So we're paying X amount of dollars for a house. It's like, we got to shoot as much in here as we can. So like it's like Biscuit's bedroom, Jeremy's bedroom, the backyard where the dog and the lady are. Everything comes from basically like one house, and we just use the house to its fullest. But like the interesting thing about that street is like when we went there for prep and we were kind of walking down the street checking out these houses and like, yeah, this could be New Jersey. Maybe we can use this house. People like come out of their houses and like grab you and drag you into their house, like film here, film here. Like I remember one house, we were in the kitchen and the DP's like, I don't like this kitchen. The white cabinets, the light's gonna reflect and everything else. And like the homeowner pulled the cabinet off and flipped it around and it was wood and stuck it back up, and he's like, no, this is wood. We can make it wood. It's like these houses are made for filming. It's kind of how they make a living. It's really a bizarro world.
And then once they learn that you're doing a low-budget show?
Yeah, then it was like, get the fuck out of here.
They
Like,
give you
you're
the
going to
bum
pay us
rush.
how much? Well, the other thing about that street is like each house is only allowed to film 14 days out of the year. So they really have to pick and choose their productions, you know, and because we're coming in paying nothing, you know, the next day they can get a commercial that wants to shoot there and pay 20 grand for their house, and we're offering up, you know, a tenth of that maybe.
Right.
So they're really like, independent guys get out.
Where'd you guys do the bar?
The bar we shot also out in Van Nuys. You know, you know the Bootlegger where this takes place. The Bootlegger's this little local bar in Highlands, which kind of looks like this, or did at one point. The Bootlegger is actually no longer. Now it's sort of a hip and trendy place that's been redone. But that really kind of lends itself to the Bootlegger. And I always sort of like that. Look at that back wall. It always reminded me very cartoonish, like those big sort of marks in the wall.
Right.
It looked very cartoon. And that girl always struck me as like a bubble floating above Biscuit's head, like his thought bubble. That girl just sort of hanging there.
See, you had, once again, better directed first film than mine. You had ideas, like subtext, where mine was all text. What's the name of the bar? So in Highlands, there was Dr. Gimpy's.
Yeah.
There was the Bootlegger.
Dr. Gimpy's.
I remember Dr.
Yeah, that
Gimpy's.
place is
Then there
like
was a
gone.
place that, what was it? It became the Clada or something like that. It's across the street from the convenience store down by like where High L's Market is. But the Bootlegger's the one that's kind of about a bridge, right?
All the way down there, yeah.
So you think that's hip and trendy now? I
Now
haven't been
it
there
is-
in years.
No, they've redone it. Danny Shields bought the place and made it some reggae place, but like they've redone the whole thing. Like that paneled walling is gone.
Really?
Which it's kind of become this.
Highlands, that town. Well, I grew up in Highlands. You grew up in Atlantic, which is like the next town over. And Atlantic Highlands is actually a town, and Highlands is classified as a borough. It's not big enough to be a town. However, it was. I don't know if this is urban legend or not, but it was once reputed to be in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most amount of bars in 1 square mile. The town is just was littered with bars.
Because if you lived in Highlands, you had to drink.
Pretty much. You're below sea level, you're a clamor, you got to drink.
Well, that sort of became the thing. When you were 21, you had to run the gamut. You had to go have a beer and a shot in every bar in Highlands and see how far you can make it. And inevitably, you got like 5 of the 21 done, and you were done.
There
kicking
are
on your
real
shoes.
like hole in the wall joints too, like
Oh,
the
yeah.
Bootlegger and Dr.
Miller Street
Gimpy's.
Bar.
That Miller Street bar is exactly what I'm thinking of. It just kind of looks like you're going in the hallway of somebody's house and you get in,
And a bartender
it's this
pops up.
dank old man's bar. And suddenly you're like,
I love that place. It had like 4 stools, but you're right. It's as if you're walking down a hallway and a bartender pops up.
That was when I was when I wrote Jersey Girl. That was the bar that I had in mind for the bar that they hang out in all
But you
the
couldn't
time.
fit your equipment in there,
No
right?
way. That's what I even said. I was like, we want to shoot there, and we went and location scouted. They're like, are you fucking crazy? They're like, we could build this bar. It's like it's really literally 4 walls and a door that leads to the street. But Highlands is a very bar-ridden town. And you did kind of capture the bar thing.
Yeah, and
Quite
incidentally enough, we shoot a lesbian scene later on that takes place at the same bar, and
It's
I'll
supposed
show
to be a
it to
different
you.
bar?
Yeah, I'll show it to you later. It was a kudos to our set designers to whip it in and actually make it look like a club, like to bring this dank hole-in-the-wall bar and make it kind of look like a lesbian club, which God knows what a lesbian club looks like. I actually got shit from some lesbians about my lesbian scene, but I guess
What'd they
we'll talk
say?
about it later. They were like, this chick just came up to me after a film shoot, and she was like, directors. And I was like, okay, this is no way to start. What are your thoughts on the movie? And she's like, you've never been to a lesbian bar, have you? And I was like, no, you got me. She's like, there's never that many good-looking girls in a lesbian bar. I was like, oh, all right. I'll keep that in mind for my next one.
So here's you playing. Who do you play in the movie?
I play Gil.
Gil. So you're winding up directing a movie, and as we talked about in somewhere else on the DVD, part of the financing came largely from you being like, I'm going to be in it. So you were kind of married to being into this movie once you got into the casting process. So even if you were like, I want out of this shit, you couldn't do it at that point.
Right.
How was it to direct and be in the flick at the same time with lines? I've directed and been in movies, but I'm smart enough to
Silent
not say
Bob.
anything.
Brilliant. Yeah, I tried to convert this to Silent Gil, and it didn't work.
That out.
Yeah, incidentally enough, it was like, as we got to doing it and as it got closer, I was like, Jesus, I wish I wasn't in this movie. It's just too much. And like, when we'd get there the day of shooting, it's like you have so many other things in mind. Like the day before you're doing your shot list and everything else, you have so many concerns and things that you don't even think about going into it. It's like we'd get there and we'd set up the scene that I was in, and we'd get up there and it would occur to me that I have no idea what the lines are. Like I was like, well, I wrote it, so obviously I'll know what all the lines are. But I wrote it 2 years before we shot it, and it was like, I have some great outtakes actually of Trevor where we're in a scene and I just stop talking and Trevor just picks up my lines and just starts talking, and I just crack up laughing at it. But that was like there's so many things that you don't think about, and one of them was like, honestly, the lines didn't get a lot of thought.
Right.
And for that I apologize because my performance suffers.
An invaluable tool when one is directing themselves in a movie is this thing called video playback, where essentially what they're seeing through the camera, the film camera, is also recorded onto, like back in the day it was a little tape, and now of course it's all digital.
Yeah.
So you could actually, after you say cut, you can go back and watch what you just shot with you in it. Did you guys have playback?
Yeah, well, that's essentially what happened, because like I said, we had an AD and then we didn't have an AD, and it was like I would be in these scenes, and then after the scene I would go to the monitor and watch watch the scene back and check it. But like I said, by the time like you're running such a tight schedule that they can't pause for you to watch the scene back. So
Right.
it's basically like you're watching the scene back and they're already tearing down the set, moving on to the next shot. So it's like, I hope we got everything.
A lot of leaps of faith. So, do you mean to say, like, when you guys shit canned the AD, you never got another one to replace him?
Well, we lost the AD, and we did bring somebody else on, but he had never done an AD before. For a while, we used one of the producers, came in and did it, and then we had this kid that was going through the Directors Guild training program. He came in and did it, but
There's a huge bump up for that dude, where he's just like, hey, suddenly I'm an AD.
it was like, you've been promoted. You are now the AD.
Who's the chick that plays? Is it Marty or Marty?
Yeah, it's Marty.
Marty.
That's Heather Page Kent, who was awesome. Like, again, when we were casting for this, and you go into the casting guy, he says, you know, ideally, who do you see in these roles? And you throw out these names, like it's sort of this type of person. And for the Marty character, I threw out a character who was a TV actress, who I said, it's kind of like this one. And so as we came back closer to casting, the casting guy says to me, remember that TV actress that you said would be right for this role? She's interested in doing the part and wants to have a meeting with you. I'm like, you know, I never thought of that. I'm like, wow, she's on TV. She's got a TV
It's
show.
a real
She's,
cut to the chase kind of moment.
I'm like, nice. So we went out, and she's, lo and behold, she's really kind of into the role, and I'm like, nice. So we already had set up people to come in and read for Marty, but because this was the lady I asked for, and now she's into it, I didn't really read the Martys all that seriously because I thought I pretty much had it cast. And as we kept going on and on with the process, it became so much to get this TV actor because now it was suddenly she needs a hair person and wardrobe and all that, and we're okay in this and within our budgets trying to do it. And about a week before we start filming, I get a phone call from her that says, I'm in New York, and I don't think I'm going to make it back for the first day of filming. And I said, well, you're up the first day of filming. There's no two ways about it. It's the airport stuff. I can't reschedule it. Well, I don't think I'm going to make it back. Like, we're a week out.
Right. That's a call you don't want to get.
Yeah, incidentally, I got that call about 10 minutes after I found out we couldn't film at night on the street. So that was a very bad day to be a director. But luckily, Heather did come in and read for that part, and we called her up with a week's notice, and she was like, totally, and came on board, and I think she did a great job.
She reads as very Jersey.
Very Jersey.
Like, when I look at her, and it's what's kind of nice too is in the movie, Rashida's character has been living out in Los Angeles,
right.
and Marty, what's her name again? Heather.
Marty.
Heather's character has been back in Jersey,
Right.
and like Rashida's got, you know, kind of natural tan to her,
Right.
and Marty's got that
Kinda
like
pasty.
East Coast pasty look. It worked out nicely.
Yeah. No.
Rashida, was she cool to work with?
Rashida was. Rashida originally came in and
It's
read.
Quincy Jones' daughter. I mean, she's done a bunch of other things, but like Quincy
Right.
Jones, and is Peggy Lipton her mom?
Yeah, Peggy
Peggy
Lipton's her
Lipton's
mom.
fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
That's
no.
the way this chick gets her looks. Man. She's a
Rashida,
good-looking
yeah,
chick.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Rashida came in and actually read for Marty first. And when she came in and she read, I was like, not really feeling Marty from her, but I was like, man, she'd be a great Carrie, I think. So when she was finished reading Marty, and she did a great job reading Marty, she just wasn't what I envisioned for Marty.
Right.
So I said, you know, and like I said, I kind of thought I had Marty cast already, and she did such a great job reading. I was like, you know, what would you think about reading Carrie? And you know, having never done this before, I had this huge audition scene for Carrie, which was like 7 or 8 pages, and it was this meaty dialogue. And she was like, "Oh, let me see it. I'll give it a read." And she went out, and she looked at the 7 or 8 pages or whatever, and we read one other person meantime. And then she was like, "Okay, I'm ready to do this." And it was literally about 10 minutes. And I was like, "You sure? You can take more time. You can do whatever you want." She came in and read these pages and just nailed it. And I was like, perfect. There's my Carrie. And what I like about Rashida is like she is, you know, she's a beautiful girl, but like she's like understated. Like she's not like, you know, looks like she can be an everyday girl next door type attractive,
right.
and that's what appealed to me. It's like, you know, it's not some goddess or whomever, and you know, I kind of like one of the things I like about the casting of the movie is everybody looks like they can be just, you know, your buddy, and everybody's kind of
Real life people.
exactly. It was one of my favorite scenes in the movie, this one here.
Why?
Just because there's so much going on. It's like, you have the guys, everybody's performances in here, and Paget Brewster. I mean, I got to touch on her. She came in and actually read for Marty, and again, I thought I had Marty sort of cast, and she just came in and gave such a good read. I was like, wow, I'd love to see her do something else, and I talked her into maybe coming back and reading for this part, and when she came back in and she read for it, man, she just, again, nailed it. And she was getting ready to leave. She hadn't been in a lot of things at this point. Like, this is way before she did, like, the Andy Richter show and these things. I'd seen her in a few other things, but wasn't really sure, a lot of things that she had done. But she came in and she read for that and really kind of nailed this part, like just did such a good read. And she got up to leave, and as she was leaving, she stopped in the doorway, and she turned around and she was like, I would give my right arm to play this part. If anything I can do better or anything. And like, it was just really such a touching moment, and she just nailed it anyway. But like, I mean, the minute she left, I was like, yeah, let's call her agent. We were still, the casting guys like, well, we're still reading 10 other people for it. Maybe we shouldn't call it just yet. But man, it was just such like, A, she plays the part perfectly, right. And then B, like to have her like be like, I really want to do this. I just really thought it was really neat. Like in this town, to have an actor like
to actually kind of humble themselves like that. I mean, most people come in too cool for school and leave even cooler.
Exactly.
So it's nice every once in a while when you meet somebody who's kind of like not only authentic, but somebody who's like, fuck what I'm supposed to be. I want to do this so badly. I'm gonna say something that may be embarrassing myself or something like that. That is kind of cool,
right?
Because it goes the opposite way with when you're with the director, because you're not like, oh, that chick just embarrassed the fuck out of herself. You're like, wow, she's committed.
Right. And this scene here too, we shot in this bar, like I said, out in Van Nuys. The bar was still open when we shot this. It's like the Quick Stop, that place that just won't close. Like it's like, look at this bar. There's like 10 people in there at their busiest hour, and you can't close the place. But we shot this scene, and it was getting quite late in the day, and we had agreed on a time that we would leave. But this shot right here, this two-shot of them, we were up against the wall. Like literally, we had to be out of this place, and we had just enough film in this. Like, I don't know if there's room on this DVD or if I can ever put it on here, but literally, as they finished this two-shot and stopped the dialogue, we ran out of film. Like the gods were smiling on us that day.
Right.
It was kind of neat.
That's the kind of danger and the excitement, and you don't even think about it as danger and excitement at the time because it's just how it is, of making a movie with no money whatsoever.
Well, you call it danger and excitement now. When you're on the set, it's not danger and excitement. No. It's this sucks.
It's just like, did we get it? Yeah, we got it. We rolled out just as they finished. Thank fucking God. The editing process. When you guys went into the editing room, presumably, did you do dailies during the show or no?
We did not dailies. We did weeklies,
right.
Where it's like every several days you're looking at stuff. But yeah, it was like going into the editing room. I didn't know what the fuck we had.
So it's the first time you're basically seeing all the footage, really.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to edit? Just the editing process, shape the movie together.
Editing maybe 2 weeks. I worked with a great editor, Jerry, who, it was my first time doing it, and he was just great about like, Jerry, this is kind of what I'm looking for. Let me see this. And he was really great just basically doing all the technical stuff that I could do and just changing stuff around and moving it. But, like every independent film, we just didn't have enough shot. I'd go in, I'd look at a scene, and I'm like, I don't really like that take. What do we got next? And he's like, shaking his head. I'm like, okay, I like that scene.
And did you guys do digital or did you cut film?
We cut film.
Did you?
Yeah.
So they had like a flatbed?
Oh, no. We did it digital. We did it on an Avid.
On an Avid system, right.
I still don't know.
That was terrible. Jerry didn't teach you enough. Jerry pulled the education back at a certain point. And so how long would you say your post-production was?
It was very long.
It was it?
And
was that by virtue of the fact that you just didn't have money, or what was it?
It was by virtue of the fact that we had hired a post-production supervisor that never actually worked on the film. It was basically they hired somebody to use their name around town to give us great rates,
right?
But that person never came on board. And actually, when I called said post-production supervisor and asked like, when are you getting started, she yelled at me and said, I'm not working on your movie. I hung up the phone and I was like, sorry to disturb you, ma'am. So I wound up. This is one of my favorite shots here. Look at triple action. You had the bartender Slater was throwing up the thing, Gillen Biscuit, and then
The background in those two. That was a nice shot.
pretty impressive. And that's that scene right there. That's Winoka, who didn't want to really punch Jeremy. Had a hard time with that. I remember she was actually in tears one time because we were like, no, get a little closer.
This is the movie where we're making chicks cry left and
basically.
right.
Basically. But that always struck me as funny.
So the post-production supervisor wasn't working on, so you wound up being pretty much your own post-production supervisor, I guess?
Yeah, it was like, I had no idea how to do a movie or anything. It was literally me driving around this reels of film for months driving through L.A. If you ever saw a real confused guy driving around L.A. with a bunch of film in his car, it was me. And I was going from like one place to another and like, okay, is this where we get the titles done? And then, yes, but did you do this? No. All right, bye. And it was like, reschedule us. It just went on and on. It took me about 4 months of literally driving around. Like, you got to keep in mind that $380,000 complete strangers gave me to go out and make a movie. And here I am tooling around town in 100-degree weather with it on my front seat.
Slowly melting.
Yeah, it's not good.
What? Here's that lesbian bar sequence you're talking about.
Yeah, same bar as the bootlegger, which...
Those are some pretty good-looking chicks for a lesbian bar, sure.
Yeah, that's where we got in a little trouble.
So, what was your first public screening of the flick? Was it that screening at
your thing? Vulgarthon was the first public screening?
No, because I thought I had seen it already, and when we had that screening at, I don't want to say, it's not Radford, it's that other... Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, had we done it there before?
Yeah, totally.
It is Radford. It's a Radford studio. No, Raleigh. Raleigh studio.
That's the other R.
Yeah, that was like a distributor screening, and it was for cast and crew. That was the first time we ever showed it.
Put it up on a screen.
How
does it feel watching it that big, writ large on the screen? I remember the first time I saw Clerks writ large, I was just like, oh my God, it's so big, and everyone keeps cursing, and it fucking looks terrible, and what was I thinking? And I'm ruined.
Yeah, I had all that. I didn't stay in there for it. Oddly enough,
That was a good screening. I stayed in there for it, and it had a really good reaction in that room.
Cool. I couldn't sit there. I still don't think I can sit through it. Every now and then I'll go in just to sort of monitor where the crowd is with it, but the handful of times we've screened it, and it didn't get a lot of big screenings, but like film festivals or we showed it in Vulgarthon, it seemed to have gone over pretty well.
So you went to the San Diego Film Festival? Did you go to any other film festivals?
We went to the San Diego Film Festival. We went to the Big Bear Film Festival, which is a huge event. It's like Sundance, Big Bear. And then we did
a nice town, though. It's actually a pretty nice place to hold the festival. If they can break that festival out a little bigger, it's a nice place to go. It is kind of like Park City. You can ski up there and whatnot.
It's like Park City Junior.
Way junior.
But no, we also did the Greenwich Film Festival, which I was all excited about. I'm like, ooh, a film festival? Yeah. Well, I'm thinking Greenwich. I'm like, a film festival in Greenwich, New York? That's going to be great. That's going to be the real artsy types. And they're like, no, Connecticut. I'm like, oh, that would have been my second choice.
And then we did. We had two screenings of it at two different Vulgarthons. The first one I think was 2002 maybe or something like that.
Dear God.
I think it was 2002 or 2003. We had a Vulgarthon back east in Jersey. I want to say, you know what? It was 2000. It was either late 2001 or early 2002. And it was because that was one of the last things I did on the East Coast before I moved out to Los Angeles in early 2002. So we screened it there. And I just remember the Q&A afterwards was you were just fucking on fire. It was like I do a lot of Q&A, and I was sitting there watching the Q&A going, fuck, he's good.
He means literally on fire. The crowd saw the movie, and it was like a Frankenstein scene. They came at me with torches.
They were way into it. I remember the board reaction afterwards was it seemed to be in complete agreement that Now You Know was their favorite film. Like a lot of praise for it and whatnot.
Well, I think a large part of that is because they hadn't seen me do anything other than Randall. So just out of the curiosity factor, they were like, wait a minute, Anderson's in another movie? Is he doing that funny walk?
Where's that funny walk? And then the next Vulgarthon screening we had was last year, and I guess it's or this year rather. By the time it comes out, probably last year. There's footage from the Q&A on this DVD of the screening that we had out here at a Vulgarthon that we held at the ArcLight at the Cinerama Dome, where we had, it was packed out. It was like 850 people or whatnot. And it was a pretty big screening and pretty great Q&A there as well.
That was neat to see it up on the big screen.
That's
mean,
a
the
big
Cinerama
fucking
Dome,
screen.
that is a big screen.
Totally.
I probably watched more of that screening than I had any other, just for the fact that I'll never see it on a screen like that again, and that was pretty neat.
That was we had screened Chasing Amy during that particular Volgathon as well, and I actually did come back and watch it because I'd never seen it projected that big, and it would never have played at the Cinerama Dome. So I too took advantage of like the big screen opportunity, because that is a massive fucking screen, and that room is just so. It's such a fucking barn, and there's so much history there that you're just like, it felt very, very cool to see the screen, to see the film on that screen at that location.
Right.
It was pretty hot.
Yeah.
So at what point in the process do you kind of sit there and go, I do or don't want to make a movie after this? Like during the making of this movie, during the making, you had 18 days to shoot. Your head's in the game.
Right.
But in post, are you thinking about, I want to try this again, or are you just kind of like, you're so inundated with the current movie that you're like, I don't even want to fucking think about touching a movie ever again?
Yeah, I don't know exactly when it happens. I know it was a roller coaster ride. One day I wanted to make another movie. The next day I wanted to commit suicide. It's it's a real roller coaster ride, and and even to this day, sometimes I want to make another movie. Sometimes I'm like, fuck that. I don't know. I do want to make another one, just to kind of, because I see so many mistakes that I made, and I just think I could do it so much better if I could try it again. So there's that. And then again, if I really think about it and go, do I want to go through this again? It's kind of like, no.
Yeah, but you'd imagine the second time around, having been through it once and having, learned from, and it's not always like your mistakes. It's the mistakes, like you get an AD who stays with you to run a show, stuff like that. Or you get a post-production supervisor that actually works on your show and doesn't be like, leave me alone, click. Stuff like that makes your life infinitely easier. Like most of the credit for the movies I've done, I always try to lay off on to the people who deserve it, because you got like one job, right, which is to make sure that the actors kind of give that performance on camera that you were kind of hearing in your head when you wrote it. Everyone else are the people that actually make the movie happen. Right. You're just like the guy that's arbitrarily in charge, and you get to walk in and be like, well, say this differently and shit like that. But it's like, the producers, the ADs, the cast, it's this the incredible machine that, like, everybody is a really integral part of, and for some reason they just kind of shine the light on the person that has the overview of the whole thing. But it's a matter of like who you surround yourself with as well. So I would imagine next time around, you get yourself an AD who's there for the whole time, you're probably pretty much 100% better positioned than you were last time.
Surround myself with better people. Let me write that down.
And you yourself have had an interesting. You're right, man. That doesn't look like the same bar.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, it's pretty damn good.
Hang a little animal print on the wall, some neon lights.
And just like the table dropped down with the higher bar behind it really sells it kind of differently.
But I guess this is a male's version of a lesbian bar. Like, there's just hot chicks around. That's the way I've always envisioned it.
Now, you and I have known each other from high school forward. I went to a Catholic grade school through 8th grade, and you probably went to Atlantic. And then over to Hudson for 7th and 8th grade for what do they call that? Junior high. Yeah. And then high school. And that's we met in high school. And I believe we probably met through Jane Kurtz, Mike Bellicos' current wife, but then just Jane Kurtz. Right. So back in high school, you were so not the drama fag that I was. Like, I was the dude who would do the plays and shit like that. And you showed no real interest in any of that stuff.
No, sir.
And then one day when we started making Clerks, you come down to auditions, and I'm like, God, this dude's got it. This dude's good. And you wind up being Randall and whatnot. How odd has it been to look back on what was high school, like 15, 17 years ago? Right. Or more at this point? To the point now, I know, it doesn't make you feel old sometimes, doesn't it?
The other day, Trevor said, I was born in 1981. I was like, I remember 1981. Right. That sucks. Like, he was telling me, never mind, because I can't think of the song to reference, but he was telling me the first pop song I remember was the Scorpions song, and I was like, "Rock you like a hurricane." He's like, "No, not that one," and he was like sang that ballad one, like,
Right.
and I was like, "Dude, that's when they were on their way out." He's like, "Yeah,
He is kind of a young pup, isn't he?
that sucks."
When you look back at 17 years ago and the present, does it weird you out? Like, are you like, did you ever imagine seeing yourself as a director or as an actor? Or
I still don't see myself as a director or an
welcome to
actor.
the club.
Nothing, very little's changed. I still gossip with Roth and hang out with Vic. Nothing's changed. No, so I didn't see that. It's really bizarre to look back on it. And like I just remember going to the damn video store, that RST, and getting movies from you. And like I would never have any idea of what kind of movie I'd want to see. I'm in there searching for Navy SEALs, and you're like, no, Jeff, watch this. Like you gave me Reservoir Dogs for the first time, and I remember I went home. You had like a bootleg copy of Reservoir Dogs. You can't get in trouble for that, can you?
Not anymore.
Okay,
That's
good.
why I don't sweat. Like people get like, aren't you uptight about people downloading your movie and bootlegging and piracy? I'm like, nah, because back in the day, I used to do it. I used to go to comic book shows and buy scripts that weren't published yet, and I used to go out and buy movies that were pretty high-end bootlegs, not the ones where somebody's sitting in the back of the theater, but something that came from an author in house. So I had a
Right.
pretty pristine copy of Reservoir Dogs when it was still in theaters, and I had a pretty pristine copy of Silence of the Lambs when it was still in theaters too.
Right. But I remember you gave me that copy, and I went home and I popped it in, and I fell asleep during it. And like to look back on it now, it's such a great
you fall
movie. But
asleep
like,
during
yeah, but like
Reservoir Dogs?
my movie taste was so far up my ass, and like I just had nothing. Like I don't know. I just remember that, and it always makes me chuckle now 'cause it's such an awesome movie. But I'm picture myself back then, this little $1.05 kid sleeping on the couch during Reservoir Dogs, probably with a mullet.
You're like, why hasn't anything exploded yet? Fuck this. Do you ever wish that your life had taken a different path, that you hadn't gotten involved in movies and stuff? And like, what were you planning to do when we were making Quick Stop? You were working at AT&T,
I was working at AT&T.
At the mailroom?
And I was working in the mailroom for AT&T.
but what were you doing? You were studying like architecture.
I was
or
going to
something.
school for architecture and design, yeah. Which I knew I didn't want to do that. I was Dante at that point. I was reaching for straws like, I need something to do. Everybody's going to college. I'm going to college. But I so wasn't into it, and I so didn't want to do it. And like that AT&T, I would have killed myself if I spent the rest of my life doing that. But no, it wasn't like I acted in Clerks and went, aha, my calling. I never embraced that either. I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know.
I do remember during the process of Clerks, like during making the movie, it's not like you were always, once you were in, you were in. Like it wasn't like you were like, this is just something I'm fucking doing. Like you treated it seriously and stuff. But the moment it ended, it was like life went back to normal, and then you'd pop into the video store and be like, you're still working on this movie? Is this done?
I'm like, Kev, what could I rent today?
Right,
Where's
I'm
Navy
like,
SEALs?
do you want to see your footage? You're like, whatever. Move on and rent a picture.
Yeah, I mean, that was bizarre to me. That was, the process. Like I said, I never thought about it beyond what you see on screen. It was kind of just bizarre. And that's why it was like weird for you, like you were going away to film school. I remember I was upset that you were leaving RST. I'm like, am I still gonna get free movies?
So at a certain point after Clerks went to
Here
Sundance,
comes a big continuity thing.
Where is it?
At some point, we're gonna come back and the light's gonna be off. Because I only had, I think it might be the light that's behind Rashida. Yeah, when we walk into the scene, the light's on, and when Heather is leaving, the light's off. I just figure I'll point these things out now just to save the discussion later.
if you don't point them out, sir, eventually you'll read about them on the IMDb or on your website. I cannot.
Well, we could fill a page with continuity things. So
Not a
save
week
it.
goes by where somebody doesn't pop up on the website and go like, "In Chasing Amy, I could see a reflection of the crew in the window," and I'm like, "Dude,
No,
if I heard
that's
that
the
once,
ghost of a kid who died on the set.
yeah, who hung himself." Kind of mix up two mythos there. You moved out to Los Angeles, right, like circa '94 or '95, right around that period.
No, it had to be later than that because Clerks was out on video, so it was like 90.
So it's 95. It would be 95.
95, I guess, yeah.
And about how long? And so you didn't start shooting this till 2001.
What did I do in that time?
What
Is
were
that
you
what you're
doing
getting
for
to?
like 6 or 7 years?
Kind of trying to figure out the lay of the land in LA. How to
You're
get
like, I
from
just
point
got
A
the
to
freeways
point
down.
B.
That's when I decided to make a flip.
You know, the first time I moved out here, I went to like 7-Eleven and got a map, and the map was like a cross. It had the 405 and it had the 101, and that's it. Like, so literally for the first 3 years, I was going off this map and just totally lost. Here he comes. This kid still calls me up to see what I'm filming nowadays. I made his entire year with this scene. Look at that headgear. That is great casting right there, if I must say. Look at that kid. Awesome.
Oh, that dude is.
Still calling me to this day. Jeff, what do you got? You filming anything? I'm your guy.
Can I touch something else this time?
He's like 6'5" now and looking to grab boobs.
So what did you do? What did you do for that stretch, that 6-year period?
I didn't do a lot of anything. It was like I don't even know why I moved out here. It was like I wanted to get out of New Jersey. I figured out here would be fun. When I first moved out here, I tried my hand at acting, and I'm such a horrible actor.
Not true.
It was
So
just
not
a
true.
disaster. I can't audition. I have no idea. Audition and acting are two
Two
separate
different
animals.
things. Muse is the same way. Muse is not a really good auditioner, and thankfully I've never had to audition, or I have auditioned once or twice for that movie I did last summer, Catch and Release. I went into what I thought was going to be a meeting where you just sit down and talk, and I kind of put committed like the 2 scenes to memory anyway because I'd run them so much the day or two before, and I thought maybe like she'd ask me to run them with her and stuff like that. So I came in the memorized. And I sit down for what I think is a meeting, and all of a sudden they set up their camera. They're like, go. And I was like, oh, fuck, this is an audition. And suddenly I was on the other side of it going like, this blows. I don't know how people can fucking do it. And there is an art to it, because some people can just walk into a room and kind of start auditioning, and they're real good in a room. And I think it's more important to be real good on the set.
Yeah.
Because you'll meet people who will give fantastic auditions. And then, like, on the day, you're like, where's that guy? Can I have that guy back? Like, dude disappeared.
Well, it's like, you know, to go in the room and to be in the moment of a scene, and you're playing to like a chair. Like you can't play off of somebody. Like, you know, that's I guess mostly what I do is like just to play off of people like Brian O'Halloran, like make funny faces to him when he's saying his lines. It's, you know, easy.
So when you wrote this, probably you didn't write it in 2001. You wrote it at least a year, maybe 2 before that.
Yeah, it was. I just kind of wrote it just fucking around one day because, like I said, when I was out here trying my hand at acting, I was reading so many scripts and was like, "Are you kidding me? They're making this fucking movie. It's horrible." So I just sat down and kind of started writing one day, and it shaped up and it sat on my desk, and my then wife at the time, Lisa, read it, and she was like, "You know, this isn't bad." And she's like, you should probably give this to somebody to read. So I gave it to my theatrical agent at the time, who took it and read it and said, yeah, you know what, this isn't bad. And he sent it out to like 10 or 11 companies, you know, big companies and studios and stuff. And I think out of the 11, I wound up meeting with like 9 of them who were like, yeah, this is pretty good. You know, it's kind of small and, you know, but coming from the Clerks world, that's what I was writing. Small. It was like keep it in a few locations, just make it about dialogue.
And you've got fucking about 1,000 more locations than we had on Clerks, sir. So he read it and kind of dug it and got it out there?
He read it and dug it and got it out there, and lo and behold, we took a few meetings. For a while, there was a company that was interested in making it, and it sat with that company for about a year. And then the producer who was interested in making it wound up leaving. So that we got the script back. And I was like, this guy, speaking of wooden, look at this. Don't look. Don't look. Throw the paper. There's a truck on the side of you. Don't look. And I'm riding in the back of the truck saying this to the kid because you could see him at one point. He starts to smile and laugh. It's because I'm yelling, watch the car! While we film it. Yeah, but like we got the script back, and then a friend of mine, Jason, was like, hey, I know these guys that have an internet company that are interested in making movies. Do you have anything for them to read? And I sent them the script of this, and about 3 days later, they were like, yeah, totally. Could we make this if we raised the money? I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
So, so at that point, I mean, you mentioned your wife at the time, or then wife. That was Lisa, who played Caitlin in Clerks. Yeah. So she's technically an actress, although she never really considered herself an actress, or doesn't at this point. I don't remember. I don't know. But were you ever like, I should just cast my old lady in this movie? Or were you smart enough to not do that?
No, it's by that point, like Lisa and I were married and divorced, and it was like she.
You got a unique relationship too, because it's not like you guys bitterly divorced. You guys one day were just like, nah, let's get divorced, and you're still kind of friendly.
It was almost that simple. Like to tell the story, it was like one night we both just kind of looked at each other and were like, "Are you feeling this?" She was like, "No." "Are you?" I was like, "No." That was it. The next day she moved out.
If only it could always be that simple and that beautiful and that pat.
I guess.
So at that point, it wasn't even an option. You weren't even thinking about it. Like when you were writing it, like I write and I think about the people I'm going to cast in most cases. Some cases, they're wide open. You wind up casting people.
Right.
But it's always great when you're writing specifically for people.
I didn't think about it that far. Like even to this day, like when I write scripts, and it's always amazing when we send out a script and you're taking a meeting of something that you wrote and people have interest in it. The first question out of their mind is, who do you see in these parts? I never think about that. Like very rarely do I write something with somebody specific in mind. The Marty character, when they asked me, I gave a perfect actress who I think would play that part right, but it wasn't written in that tone. So I think Lisa could have easily played Marty.
Right.
You know, but it just never came about. Lisa was never really into acting, and it just never came up.
Would you have classified yourself as like class clown when we were in high school?
Would you have classified me as the class clown?
I would never go so far as class clown, because class clown to me is the dude that's like, look at me, and you were much more
That's
subtle. Yeah, you were much more subtle. You always had a really great wry sense of humor, but it was kind of laid back. It was not the like, this is for everybody. This is like for 4 people around you. But the one thing I do remember about you in high school is you loved to torture teachers, like Mrs. Clark. And Mr. Hurley.
I remember Mrs. Clark actually threw me out of class one day because I said, "What the ham and eggs?" And she threw me out. And I was actually glad she threw me out because I was like, now I'm going to expose you. I can't wait to go to the principal. And I made her write when she threw me out. I said, I want you to document that I said, "What the ham and eggs?" I said, because when I go down and explain to the principal that I said, "What the ham and eggs?" he's going to assume I said the fuck, and I don't want to say it now. I said, you write that on there. And I went down there all self-righteous, and he's like, Anderson, why are you here again? I'm like, because I said, "What the ham and eggs?" You explain it to me.
Mr. Diadios. I remember too being in that history class, and they introduced the Hawley Smoot Act, like we were reading about it.
Holy Smoot.
That did become a catchphrase for a while. Holy Smoot.
I thought that was a nice. I remember Mr. Hurley?
Yeah.
I remember doing Mr.
Eddie's
Hurley's
disease, that was his catchphrase.
I remember doing Mr. Hurley's class, and at the end of class, he would allow me 10 minutes at the end of class to do the People's Court. And I would put on the People's Court. I would be Judge Wapner, and I would create these cases and throw them out in the room, and they'd have to come up and argue these cases. I don't know where or how that started, or
that
like
was
why
a dude
I got away
that was
with
just
that.
like, I'm over this. I'm going to turn the class over to Anderson.
Anderson's going to make some court case, and it would always be the most inane thing. All right, so your book cover was torn by this gentleman. Explain how that happened. And it would be like, go. And everybody was into it. I don't quite know how that happened.
That's a dude who really is just like, I got tenure. I don't give a fuck.
What was that one teacher? She was a math teacher. She had really long hair, really kind of a thin chick, really long hair, math teacher. You know who I'm talking to. Had like Crystal Gale hair.
Yeah. Oh, God. Now her name escapes me. I never had her, but I know who you're talking about.
Jeez, you never had her?
Well, it sounds like you wanted to.
No, I didn't want to. That chick gave me so much grief. That was one of my teachers.
Did she have like one of these things next to her nose, like a pretty big mole or something?
Yeah,
like
I think
that?
so. Here's a
kinda
quarter.
remember.
Go have a rent and all that thing off your face.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was one of those type thing. But man, she was forever giving me homework. I remember there was like one. You'd go in the class. You had these math textbooks, and at the end of the textbooks, they would have these pages that would have like 200 like problems on it. Like it was like page 336.
Right.
And like whenever I'd talk in class, she'd go, "Jeff, page 336 tomorrow." So I'd have to go home and do all, and it was literally like 300 math problems on one page. She assigned that to me, page 336, about 15 fucking times, right? So on the 16th time, I finally wise up and I use carbon paper and I write it out. The next day I'm in class and I'm like, blah, 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 trying to make her give it to me. And she's like, "Anderson, page 340, give it to me tomorrow." And I'm like, ah.
She laid the trap, sir, and you stepped right into it. Who did you hang out with in high school? Because we knew each other, but we didn't really. Like, I hung out with Bellicose and O'Donnell all the time through most of high school till I started dating Kim Lochran, and then I just stopped hanging out with everybody altogether and started dating her.
Just like a guy.
Yeah, totally.
Gets himself a lady and a ditch the friends.
Totally. And those dudes subsequently did it later on. Like, Bellicose hooked up with Jane Kurtz and then, like, kind of went off into Jane Kurtz land. And Ernie was dating, at that point, Laurie Murchison. And pretty much went to Laurie
Jane
Murchison.
Kurtz land? Is that like Knott's Berry Farm, Disneyland? What is
Pretty
that?
much is. There's a Camp Snoopy there as well.
Nice.
Who did you hang out with in high school? I remember it was Mick Elise for a while. And I remember, what's his name? Vic Guerra as well.
Yeah, Vic. I spent a lot of time with Vic. It was usually Vic Guerra, Roth. I hung out with Roth all the time. I hung out with people from like modern day, like JG, John Gawler, and stuff like that.
That's
a lot
right.
of
You were a big. You and Gawler were pretty tight.
We
Because you
were
guys
pretty
were.
tight.
I mean, you don't look like fucking twins, but you have a similar size and look and delivery about you as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Gawler was always a funny motherfucker. That's one guy that could make me laugh. And like a lot of people, when you say John Gawler and they look back at him, don't think funny.
No, he was a
But
funny
man,
dude.
he was funny. But like the lawn mowing stuff, a lot of that comes from me and JG. JG and I, after high school, that summer after high school, spent a summer working for a guy named Dink, who had a lawn mowing business. And I swear I still have a lawn mowing movie in me from the shit that we used to do. Dear God, that's coming. That movie's coming.
Who was the chick that you dated? You didn't date in high school, or did you date after high school? That chick Anne Marie.
Oh, that was after high school.
After high school, you guys went out for a while.
Yeah.
Was she contemporaries with all those people? Like, she liked Gawler and stuff like that? Or did you have
No,
a girlfriend
I
that was
think-
like, I don't like your friends, buddy?
Yeah, no, I think by then I kind of stopped hanging out with Gawler, and yeah, that was after high school. So I don't think I really hung out with all that many of them. You know, we hung out with Belly and Jane and all that, but
How often do you go back to Jersey now?
Kev loves to talk about it. Like,
I do. It's very rarely. I do many commentary tracks. Very rarely can I be like, Mr. Hurley, that is disease. For somebody to reference John Gawler, I delight in shit like this because in my off hours, that's what I love about, like, obviously I love people like Scott Mosier and stuff, but I can hang out with Brian Johnson to no end because you can reference fucking people. There was a chick that we went to high school with, and you may not remember her last name was Sukal. And we didn't really hang out with her or anything like that, but there's a picture in the yearbook of her looking through a microscope at one point, which we were always really fascinated by. And so every once in a while we drop a Sukal reference.
Microscopes?
Apparently in chemistry they had a microscope, and I skipped chemistry.
They
so I
had a
didn't know.
microscope. I see a
20
line
kids.
at it.
20 kids piled
Look at the
around it.
paramecium.
But how often do you go home?
Not too often. I go back. I'm good for 3 or 4 times a year. It's like, I'm finally getting to the place where I don't mind going back there.
Right.
It used to be like when I first lived out here and I'd go back there, it's almost like traveling back in time.
Totally.
Like if we go back there now, grunge is just catching on. they're just getting in the flannel. So I'm always amazed by that, and it used to kind of weird me out. Like when I'd go back there, I was like, Jesus, you people, mullets, it's over. But like now I sort of appreciate it. Like when I go back there, there's a certain charm to it that, like when you first move out of there, I think you're so happy to get to LA and everything else that when you go back and, you find the same cliques sort of hanging out, doing the same things, and they're hanging out. Let's go to the Bootlegger tonight. It's like, the Bootlegger, come on. Is that place still standing? But now I don't know if I'm older or what, or if it's LA, but now I go back and I sort of appreciate it more now, and I take it in, and you realize that it is fun to go to the Bootlegger and have that conversation about some broad looking through a microscope. You can't do that in L.A. Right. They're like, so some chick's looking through a microscope. What's her motivation? That's L.A.
I find my Jersey trips back, I'm good for about, like, when I'm flying into Newark, I'm like, oh man, I get that. This is a weird feeling. I get the old familiar feeling, and by the time I get back to like Monmouth County, I enjoy it really hardcore for 24 hours. I'm like, God, why did I leave? This place is great.
Right.
When the 25th hour begins, that's when I'm like, I gotta go home. I gotta get out of here. And mostly because most of the cats that I hung out with and whatnot, and my family have just kind of moved away. Like my parents moved down to Florida before I moved out here even. And then when I moved out here, most of the people I hung out with, like Moj and Brian Johnson and stuff, moved out to Los Angeles as well. So it just kind of doesn't feel like home so much anymore. Right. But I do tend to obsess about the people I went to high school with, probably way more so than they ever fucking think about me.
I'm getting that.
I do. I liked it. I liked high school. I just liked that whole world that surrounded it. Did you ever show the people from back home the movie? Like any of your friends? Did Gawler ever see it? Did Roth ever see it?
Gawler never saw it. Roth saw it, and Vic saw it. And you know, the first thing I get is just like, you named a character Biscuit. Remember Biscuit? Like it's not about the film. It's like, hey, you named him Biscuit, and they're in the bootlegger. Like that's what they identify with.
Right.
It was when we showed it in Greenwich, Vic came and saw it, and he had nice things to say afterward. I guess, you know, people don't know what to expect because I wasn't that guy. At least in high school,
right.
You always knew, and you used to say, I'm going to be a writer on Saturday Night Live. I'm going to do this.
Which I never got to do, but
you probably could.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I think that might be a lateral move or maybe a step backwards at this point. But, yeah, I did want to, like, kind of do – I knew I wanted to write for a living.
Right.
But so I guess it is kind of weird for the cats that kind of grew up with you and hung out with you to have, if you come back and be like, want to see my movie? And they're like, what are you talking about?
But I must say, me being a director is not nearly as odd as Roth being a cop. Like
Roth being a cop. This dude, Carl Roth, who we went to high school with, and I was friends with Carl. We did a lot of classes together and whatnot. And then Carl got me into, he was like varsity. He played on the varsity basketball team when he should have been JV. Like there were two teams, and he was so good. He was like a huge basketball star. Right. He was so good he played on varsity. And Roth was just like, you want to go to the games and shit and videotape the games? And this is it's weird because there's a picture of me from when I'm young with this camera that is now like it wound up in the Clerks documentary, and it winds up other places where people go like, look, even then he knew. But it had nothing to do with me wanting to be a filmmaker. I just wanted to go to the basketball games, ride on the bus with the cool kids. So I would go to games and videotape the away games and the home games, and then the basketball team would go and analyze it afterwards. So that's pretty much how I hung out with Roth all the time. And then I guess he blew his knee out or whatnot, and basketball just kind of went away. But you're right. Thinking of this dude as a cop is about as bizarre, I guess, as most people from your youth would think about you as a filmmaker.
Exactly. It's like Kevin taping a basketball game. Kevin, what'd you think of the game? I don't know, but it was cool when he said "fuck" when he missed.
That was my earliest exposure to it. Did your parents watch the movie, or your mom?
They did. Yeah. It was pretty cool. When we what screening was it? I think they came to Vulgarthon.
They went to the Vulgarthon.
They came to Vulgarthon, and it was the first time they saw it.
God, so were they there for your Q&A too?
I think they were.
Oof, that would be a real, I think, revelation, because you think your parents probably assume they know you, and then they suddenly see you in this completely different format, right, where you're like fucking Johnny Carson standing in front of an audience and shit. I bet that must have been a cool feeling. What did they think of the flick?
I guess they liked it. They were pleasantly surprised, you know. Again, like, it's so foreign, I guess, for me that what are you doing? And writing and directing, they were beyond curious, because it's like, what's it about? And I don't know. I don't really talk about it. It's, I guess they were pleasantly surprised, I would say.
When all is said and done and the movie winds up on DVD, that's the final statement. Just kind of.
Is that where this is building towards?
We are building towards the DVD, I guess.
Is that coming out? We're going to be into a new technology before this comes out.
Eventually, there'll be Blu-ray, where people just think of the movie.
You get that Now You Know hologram? Got it right here.
Like, nah, I had it on DVD. Like, DVD? That's like an 8-track. When you look back on it, because this is pretty much the end of the road for the movie, from 2001 to 2005, a 4-year journey with the movie. What goes through your head when you think about it?
What goes through my head when I think about it? You know, where do I go with this? Not a lot goes through my head. It's like it's fine. It's fun to finally have some closure. I'll be happy when people could just go out and see it and rent it and do whatever they're gonna do and stop asking me the questions. Like, right, at least now it's been so long that people no longer say when's it coming out and what's going on with it. They've just assumed I've made the whole thing up. So it'll be nice to validate myself as not being a guy who's telling stories. Yes, I made a movie, I swear. So.
Do you feel the compunction to when it comes out? Will you send like people that worked on it a copy of the movie, or?
You know,
is this going to be the Anderson Christmas gift next year?
In a perfect world, I would do that, because it's always funny to me, like when we were doing it and you hear from people and they're like, I've never seen that, or I never got that, and this and that. And like, in my world, I was always like, yeah, no, of course, everybody gets a copy, but I'm over it. If you want a copy, I'll see what I can do, but.
This is the gunshot scene you were talking about before.
Gunshot scene.
So this is the scene where you wanted to go to the house right afterwards.
We would have theoretically, in the script, they take off from here, and this scene here takes place driving. And as we're driving, Jeremy would have said, turn the car around. I've got to go there, because he had this life-altering, life-threatening moment that's finally gave him the clarity. It's a little writer's trick we use.
Can you teach me that trick when we're done?
I'm giving you a wink.
Nobody's taught me that trick yet. I think my films have suffered for it.
So yeah, we had to create this. Gil loses the keys. And what always kills me here is people think that we're parked right in front of the guy's house.
Right.
There were other scenes. What happens is they park on this neighborhood and they go through the yard. So you're a couple yards over before you break into the guy's house. And we had scenes of running through yards and stuff, but it just didn't work, so we took it out.
So people
they lose the keys and then they just sleep in front of the guy's house is always odd. But
I gotta admit, I think I might have been one of those people up until this moment. I never put it together.
Son of a bitch, yeah.
Not enough where I was just like, "Hey, sir, I have a question. Why are they parked out in front of the house that they've just home invaded?"
Well, see, I thought we can get away with it because we showed the house and then we showed the house, and I thought people would realize that they're two different houses. But apparently, I still hear that every now and then. Well, that's funny. They all run to the car and fall asleep in front of the guy's house, the guy who just shot at him.
Trevor, who we were talking about before, and we could probably do a little bit more on Trevor. This is the first movie I saw Trevor in, and I guess probably the only movie. I can't remember whether I saw Cheats or not. Right. He was in another movie called Cheats.
I never saw that.
But this was the movie that I saw him in when I started writing Clerks 2. I was writing the character of Elias, and he just kept coming into my head. Right. So basically, I wound up writing the part directly for him, and then I was just like, do you still know where this guy is? And you're like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's even into acting anymore. I'm not sure if he went back to Minnesota or wherever he's from. Right. But we tracked him down, and now he's in the movie, and we've been rehearsing for a while now. But he's a really interesting and kind of gifted actor, and what's the difference between the character he plays in your movie and the character he's gonna play in my movie, and who he is in real life, it's miles wide.
Right.
He's not like, you'll see his delivery in this picture, his inflection, and his delivery and his inflection in Clerks 2, just not even who that dude is at all.
Trevor is like an old soul. Like I said, the other day when he said he was born in 1981, kind of slapped me in the face for a second. But like when you talk to Trevor, he's a unique kid, and I like him. Just personally, I like him. Like he's a young kid. He's 24, 25 now, who listens to Bob Dylan, and like he's such an old soul. So he's kind of a neat kid in that way.
He's into.
God, I just said the sentence. He's a neat kid.
Yeah, you're an old timer,
Good thing Madonna's not here. She'd kill me for that.
He is. He's been recently trying to get everybody to replace hello when you answer your cell phone.
Don't even give.
You got to give it a little credence here.
Give
it a little credence
credit.
here. He's trying to. You answer your cell phone or any phone, you're like hello, and his new campaign, which consists of, I guess, him, me, and maybe you at this point. Although neither of us are buying into it.
No, because finish your story and then I'll give you an update.
He's going. The other day he was just like, instead of saying hello, I'm trying to get people to say flip it, and we were like, flip it. Like flip open the phone. He's like, no, just it's as arbitrary as hello. That's the kind of guy that Trevor is. He's like, flip it is as arbitrary as hello. Hello has lost all its meaning. Let's replace it with something like flip it. And it's one of those things where you have the conversation. You're like, let's get back to rehearsal, shall we? But then.
So now, given this, he pulls us all aside, and he's kind of a serious guy. He's like, listen, this is what we're going to do. Instead of saying hello, we're going to say flip it. And us as morons, we're all standing around going, all right, I can do that. So not but 10 minutes later, or it's a little bit later, Trevor calls me on my cell phone, and I answer my cell phone. I say, flip it. And he goes, what? And I go, flip it. And he's like, oh. And now, all right, I let that one pass, but the next day, calls me again, flip it, and he's like, huh? So that's why I say don't give this any credence. By the time this comes out, Flip It will be as dated as Word.
I don't know if it'll reach the heights that Word got to though. I think Flip It will always exist in a world of Trevor's making, and then perhaps the people that watch this DVD. If it caught on because this DVD though, you know that dude's gonna take credit. I just realized
we are really the pioneers. He's
Yeah,
the
really, we
idea
took it
man, but
forward.
we're the guy who took the ball and ran with it.
we're like he's like George Washington Carver, where he comes up with peanut butter, and you and me are like Skippy and Jiff, where we're like, well, let's take it to the masses. I was just in watching this now, and I don't know if it should necessarily spoil it because I can't be sure when this is coming out, vis-a-vis when Clerks 2 is coming out. But I remember when I watched, I got a copy of Now You Know, and I watched because I wanted to watch his performance again because I had it in my head as I was writing Clerks 2. And so when I was watching it, there's a story element that I lifted out of this because I was like, ooh, I like that. And I think you know what it is. I think you know what it is. It has to do with your character and Marty's character.
Oh.
I mean, because that is kind of like out of left field for me. But I liked
never
it
even
so
thought of
much in
that.
this that I was just like, deep, start putting in my
I never
own.
even thought of that.
And also there was it's true. And there's also like little elements in the movie too that I can see work their way into even Jersey Girl, which is something you might not want to take credit for.
Jesus Christ.
Those dudes sitting around with beers in their hands was a real like eye opener to me because I never really lived in the beer drinking world. Like I just don't have a taste for it and shit. Most people I hung out with, aside from like when I hung out with you for that period after high school, where me and you corrected me on it, and you're actually right because I remember I think on Clerks I was like, we
kept
used to
reading
all
this.
get high together, and you're like, no, we didn't.
I kept reading this. I didn't
It was
get
me
high.
and Vic Guerra would get high together a lot,
you.
and you would be drinking Captain Morgan spiced rum.
Thank you.
But aside from that period, which was like basically that summer of 2 months, I was never really a drinker. But when I was watching this movie and the dudes like sitting around with beers in their hands and sitting in the bar and stuff like that, I was just like, that's actually kind of nice. And I guess that's what real people do, you know?
There goes Smitty.
So boom,
Stealing my
I did.
shit
I
again.
slid that right into Jersey Girl. There's that whole bar culture thing to it, and George Carlin's character has that kind of ever-present, omnipresent beer in his hand and whatnot.
Well, that's a bootlegger-esque bar too.
Yeah,
That's,
very
I
much
guess
so.
our idea of bars are like these very wood-paneled, could possibly have animal heads hanging off the wall.
It's not like when people out here, they're like, hey, you want to go to the bar? And they go to like
There's a
Chateau
velvet
Marmont.
rope.
They go to Bar Marmont. They go to fucking like Sky Bar. When you're in Highlands, you're like, you want to go to the bar? You go to like the Bootlegger. You go to, what was it? Was it Mulligan's down by the trailer park?
You walk by Miller Street and you go, oh, there's 3 people in there. We can't go there. That's full.
It's crowded. But so thank you for that because I did, basically, I don't know if you feel this way, but when I put together movies, like not even just movies, but just in general, you're kind of the sum total of all your experiences, right? And like all the data and input that come into you on a regular basis. And when you make films for a living or tell stories for a living, things have a way of working their way in and informing what you do and stuff like that because you don't always live in the worlds that you're writing. Right. So stuff like that, like stuff like the bar scene in this and the kind of beer culture in this movie really kind of informed the writing of Jersey Girl and definitely that one element that we kind of skirted around toward the end of this picture really kind of informs the end of Clerks. I don't know if there's a percentage in there for you.
Oh, there's gonna be. Did you see the word bubble above my head? Must call attorney.
Did you
Story by.
Did you ever at what point in the writing of this did you kind of figure out the ending of the flick? Like, did you know what you were gonna do?
I kind of did.
Like,
Well,
did it
yes
ever occur
and
to you
no.
to kind of go like the really indie route and be like, they shouldn't get back together
Yes,
at all?
actually, the first draft of it, they never got back together, which it would still. I don't. Well, there's two thoughts of school to this. My first draft of this, which there were only 2, they did not get back together at the end because that's life and that's the way this is building up, and they wouldn't have come back from this conversation right here. And
Right.
and I will admit, I took a couple meetings, like I said, after the script went out, and everybody wanted them to get back together. Incidentally, one of the meetings I took was with Marshall, big director.
Gary Marshall?
Gary Marshall, yeah, with his company.
Mr. Pretty Woman, Mr. Happy Days.
Exactly, Mr. Very safe, very safe, and his ideas for this movie were very safe, but he was of the thinking that they should definitely get back together at the end, you know, I didn't like it. I said, you know, that's Hollywood and that's not what this is. But when we were doing this, the company that was really interested in making this movie, which was Davis Entertainment, they had a movie coming out with Bridges, Jeff Bridges' father. It was like his
Lloyd Bridges?
It was sort of his last film. And they gave me a tape of this to watch this film. And what it was sort of a Meet the Parents type of a film, but it was a girl that goes home to her dad and brings her the guy that she's going to marry back there to meet the dad and to, you know, sort of put him through this, but they're sort of going through a rocky relationship. Mm. And I watched this movie, and at the end of the movie, the guy and the girl have tension through the whole thing, but he sort of likes their family. But there's one scene where he wakes up in the morning and he just gets up and he goes and calls a cab and gets in the car and drives away. And that's how the movie ended. And for myself, I was like, wow, I just sat through a 2-hour movie sort of rooting for these people to get together, and they didn't.
Right.
That it felt like a letdown to me, and I was like, wow, I don't want to have that experience with that. Like, I think you can do that. You can make a movie where a guy and a girl doesn't get together, but it really has to be handled correctly, and you have to know what you're doing. And unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of faith that I knew what I was doing, so I wasn't willing to take that. After I watched that movie, I was like, that's just, I felt let down by it.
It is a kind of odd thing, I guess, and you don't realize it when you're kind of the inside. Sometimes it takes an outside viewing or somebody else to point it out to you. With Clerks, we had the ending where Brian's character Dante gets shot, and I think it was John Pearson. It was just like, makes no sense, dude. You grow to love these characters over 90 minutes, 2 hours, and then you just kill one of them, and with no good reason.
Right.
Nothing's coming. Nothing points to it. About to happen. It just kind of comes out of the blue. Right. And I was like, yeah, I guess that is kind of weird. Thank God we didn't kill him.
I just like to see you do the prequel where you're casting the young Dante in, because there goes the sequel. I actually thought I'd be able to get away with that in this script, and it was sort of one of the reasons that we never saw Jeremy and Rashida together as a couple. That's why we came into it with them not a couple, because I thought by doing that if they didn't get back together, you never saw them have a warm scene anyway, so you'd be able to get away with it. Mm-hmm. And that was my reason for never showing a breakup.
Right.
And I thought maybe for that one reason alone, we'd be able to get away with them not getting together at the end. And even this, I was sort of me compromising, because this isn't a total makeup here.
Right.
You're left at the end of the movie sort of like, it's kind of iffy, you know? Because they do give away.
That's about it right there. Like,
and they give away their
is.
honeymoon. Like, it's like, we don't even want to go on it because we're not, So I didn't fully commit to either.
So this scene you shot on the first day.
Yeah, all this airport stuff was shot the first day.
And we talked about that actress thing already. Where are the 200 extras, sir? I see maybe like 10 or 12.
In this scene, this is toward the end of the day. It gets hard when you're not paying them
People
and you're
just
barely
start fucking
feeding
off.
them. Yeah, it's yeah, there's not 200 here. There's a hallway scene. All right, there's maybe not 200 because we had people, once they got out of frame, turn around and come back. So maybe there's... See, look at that. There's people.
Look at that.
What are you
It's
talking
like
about?
Ben-Hur.
Sometimes it's actually fun. It's like The Simpsons, or it's like actually the old Flintstones cartoons where you'll see the same guy keep passing by in the back. Like you can sit and point him out.
Do you remember what the last day of shooting was?
The last day of shooting was, breaking into the house. It was Gil and Biscuit in the house,
It's one of the first scenes wound up being kind of the last scene shot.
Yep.
And at that point, you've already kind of shot the fuck out of the movie, and you're in the zone, and it was probably kind of easy and a little bit bittersweet, or were you happy it was over at that point?
A little bittersweet. I mean, I really had fun doing it. Like I said, of the shoot, it was like the 18 days shooting was just fun for me. It was like amazing to show up and see all these people who are like, to their credit, man, you don't pay these people that work on these independent films a lot of money to see people like there and sweating their asses off. Like, I'm kind of a a little bit of a fuck up in case you didn't know that, but like we'd be sitting in scenes, and I remember just screwing around. I heard that one of the lights is called the Tweenie, and I just got a kick out of that name, Tweenie. So I'd be in a scene like just fucking around with the DP, and I'd go, "You think we need another Tweenie here?" And I swear this guy came out of like the air conditioning vent with the light and like dropped it down, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm just kidding." And he's like scowling, pulling it back up, looking at me. Like they take their job so serious, and it was so fun to just be with people like that. That just, you know, it was sort of bittersweet.
I've been making movies now for a decade, for like 11, almost 12 years now. And just on this movie I shot this summer called Catch and Release, sitting behind the camera doing off camera for somebody. And on cameras, they have like these little moments. See, this was a moment I tried to steal for Clerks 2, where the chicks walk past you and you're wearing the tool belt.
I am getting a story by credit.
So
those of you who have seen this, you know.
Artfully cut out of the movie,
When we're
though.
out, we're just going to exchange the look. They're going to go, "I know," and I'm going to say, "See?"
Without now, you know, there wouldn't be a Clerks 2. I guess I'd have to say at this point, or
It's
at
going to be
least
like
a lot
the
of
Fight
elements.
Club look. That's what I want with you people who know this and have heard this. Just give me the knowing look.
So I'm sitting behind the camera, and you know how on the camera they got little things that they'll stick on the mag to let them know what's in there and stuff like that. And I went nuts one day because like I said, been making movies for over a decade. Never saw this. Maybe it's just a Canadian thing. I don't know. But I guess for a filter that they put behind the lens on the camera, they have a tag, and that they had to stick on the camera. And I was sitting there doing the off camera, and I looked over to the camera to my right and just fucking cracked up because the tag said "gel in rear," and I was just like, woo! Went nuts for a while. I called over the director. I'm like, "Gel in rear," and she was like, "That's pretty funny." And I called over Jen Gardner. I'm like, "Look at this shit, gel in rear." Straight face, just like, "Well, I don't get it." And I was like, "Oh, how can you be married to Affleck and
You're
not
like,
get that joke?"
I got to make another Clerks.
Totally. Right then and there, I'm like, it's
People
gonna
that
happen.
appreciate gel in rear.
The,
All right, I see the credits are winding up here, and let me ask you this because you've been asking me questions.
Yeah.
Anything else about Highlands you want to talk about
I
before we
could
wrap
go
this
on.
up?
Dude, I go on for hours about Highlands. Did you ever, during the day, back in the day at nights, where did you go make out? Did you go to Duck Pond? Did you go to Hudson Field?
He's really getting back to
I
this.
am, dude. I could go right into it.
No, we did the Rocks in Atlantic, down by the water. The Rocks, very
Like
romantic.
down by the marina.
Very romantic. The Captain
But
Morgan.
not very comfortable.
Spiced rum, as you call it. I always enjoy people that go, "You drank the Captain Morgan spiced rum." Like, makes
You're
it sound
big
a little
into
more
the-
exciting.
Big into the captain. I used to go up to Henry Hudson Field at night. Like there was a period where I was kind of going with Betsy Broussard, and I remember we used to go up to the Hudson Field, the lower field, not the upper field.
Because we were on the upper field. We were probably getting pelted with our beer cans as we were done whipping them off to the lower field.
I think I noticed until afterwards anyway.
I just remember coming back to school like on Monday, and for gym class, you'd go down and you'd run around the field, and then you'd meet on the field. I just remember we'd go there, and the gym teacher used to always be like, "Look at the beer bottles, these animals." And I'm sure if he ever looked at me, I'd be like,
He'd be dusting him for fingerprints. He'd find one of the animals was in his own class.
Luckily, they never caught on to Dustin for fingerprints, because I'd be out of that school.
Vinny Whitehead was one of the
Vinny
gym
Whitehead.
teachers. Vinny Whitehead,
Just
and he was. I remember he was Christian. He was kind of born again and whatnot. And
Striper lives.
yes, he was a big Striper fan.
Like he thought it was a good hook, heavy metal and Christianity.
Yeah, the
I
two
still
things,
think
that
it's
two great tastes that just
Yellow
don't
and Black
taste great
Attack.
together. Like the fucking no animals were harmed in the making of this flick.
Close
Putting it
though.
right out there.
I've got an interesting outtake.
Well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff's debut movie. Now you know. Congratulations, sir.
I just like that all you wanted to say about Vinny Whitehead was he was all Christian and shit.
We
That
were
was
just-
it.
we
That
were just
story
sitting there
went no.
talking
You're like,
about
remember
Highland.
Vinny Whitehead? He was all Christian. Yeah.
Story kind of goes nowhere.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.